Human beings have a great need to assign meaning to everything, to ask the why question. If you came here this morning and when you arrived, you're told there's no service today, service cancelled, how would you have responded? Would you say, wow, that's great, now we can go for an early lunch, let's go? Would you say that? No, you would want to know the reason. You would want to know why. What's the meaning of this? And this applies to everything that we see and experience and encounter in life, right? I mean, if you are given a task, especially at work, told to do something, you will want to know the reason behind it. Why am I being asked to do this? If your child comes back with poor grades, you won't just say, never mind, You will want to know the reason why. If you come home and find your family member in a bad mood or a worse than usual mood, you assume that there must be a reason, something must have happened. If you belong to a cell group and you are suddenly assigned to a different cell group, told to go to a different cell group, I guess you're not going to go unquestioningly and say that, wow, we submitted authority, let's just do it. You will expect an explanation. Why? We ask the why question because we assume that there must be a reason behind everything in life. But the biggest why question is not about anything in life. Do you know what the biggest why question is? The biggest why question is about life itself. What is the meaning of life? Why do I even exist in the first place? What's the point of it all? If we expect everything in life to have meaning, then surely life itself must also have meaning. And that's what all of us are searching for, whether consciously or unconsciously. We want to know why we exist. As I said in my first message, now more and more people now believe that it's possible to live a good, satisfying, and meaningful life without God, especially among the younger generation. And in this series, what I want to point out is that, hey, it's not as simple as that. Because once you throw God out of the equation, then you also have to give up many of the things that we consider important and the things that we cherish and value in life as well. Previously, I've already explained that we can't really have any concept of right or wrong without God. And that's something that's important, isn't it? Now, today I want to address the problem of meaning. Can you have meaning without God? Rational secular thinkers accept that if God does not exist, there can be no inherent meaning in life. Okay, this is not a Christian thing. Even unbelievers accept that if there's no God, this universe, this life can have no meaning in itself. And this conclusion is obvious. If the universe is uncreated, if human life is nothing more than a random chance coming together of just the right molecules, then there can be no intrinsic meaning to our lives. Some of you might have heard of this guy called Stephen Jay Gould. He was one of the most famous scientists of our time. He was an evolutionary biologist who taught at Harvard for many years, and he's a vocal critic of creationism. Now, this is what he wrote. Look at it, it's really interesting. He wrote this: we are here because one odd group of fishes had a peculiar fin anatomy that could transform into legs for terrestrial creatures. It just happened to be. Because the earth never froze entirely during an ice age period. It could well have, but it did not. Because a small and tenuous species arising in Africa 250,000 years ago has managed somehow, so far, to survive by hook and by crook. And his conclusion is this: we may yearn for a higher answer, but none exists. This explanation, though superficially troubling, if not terrifying, is ultimately liberating and exhilarating. We cannot read the meaning of life passively in the facts of nature. What is he saying? He's saying that in a naturalistic universe, there can be no intrinsic meaning. Okay? A world without God, in other words, cannot possibly have any meaning of its own. If there's no God and life has no inherent meaning, then the question becomes, how do we go about living our lives? What's going to direct our lives? What is life going to be about? And That's an important question, isn't it? Interestingly, thousands of years ago, a man had already asked that question in the Bible. He asked exactly the same question. If this life is all that there is, then what is it all about? How are we going to live our lives? He said this, he wrote a book called Ecclesiastes. In Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 12, he said this, "For who knows what is good for a person in life during the few and meaningless days they pass through like a shadow? Who can tell what will happen under the sun after they are gone?" Now, the person who wrote this is not just some lightweight daydreamer. Okay, he's none other than King Solomon, one of the wisest and richest persons who ever lived. He realized that all human beings live under two insurmountable limitations. First of all, we all die, right? As he says, our days are few. Our existence is like a fleeting shadow. Now, is there a reality beyond death's door? There may well be, but who knows? No one knows, for no one has ever come back from there to tell us about it. So our understanding of reality must necessarily be limited to our earthly existence. All we can know is this life. Secondly, he realized that we are limited by our sense perception of this physical universe. He uses the term "under the sun" many times in this book to describe this phenomenon. Is there a reality beyond the sun, beyond what our senses can perceive? Is there a supernatural realm, in other words? Again, no one knows. We don't have the means to detect it, even if it exists, right? All we can know is this world only. So this life, this world, those are our limitations. And given an impossibility of piercing the veil between this life, this world, and any other that might exist, Solomon then devoted his great ingenuity and his vast resources to conduct an experiment, which is to try to find meaning in life if there's no greater reality. What if this is all that there is, this life, this world, then can we find meaning in life? And that's how you need to read the book of Ecclesiastes. Otherwise, if you're a Christian, you read it, you'll be very troubled. Okay? He's conducting this experiment with these parameters. And that's what we're going to look at today, but only very briefly. That's all we can do. So let's get started. Number one, let's look at the implications of all that. Let's look at the implications. Like Solomon, all of us try to seek meaning in this life and this world without reference to a supernatural God. Okay, even those of us, if we're honest, even those of us who believe in God have a great tendency to do that. Because just like everybody else out there, we are constantly trying to find significance in earthly things apart from God. We may profess faith, but very often when you look at our lifestyle, we are practical atheists, right? We are trying to find meaning in this life, the things of this world. Now, modern secular people, including Stephen Jay Gould, believe that since there's no creator and hence no ultimate meaning in life, then it is up to each one of us to find, to create our own meaning in life. So what do we look to for such meaning? The usual candidates, we know what they are: wealth, work, power, pleasure, accomplishments, love, pleasure, knowledge. We chase after these things, not just for their own sake, but in an attempt to meet a greater need in our hearts, the need for meaning. Most of us, I think, if we are honest, we have to admit to ourselves that we have not quite found it yet, right? We have not quite found the answer. And we rationalize that we have not quite found it yet, whatever it is, because we don't have enough of it yet. If we have more of it, then maybe we will get it. So our natural instinct is try harder, right? Work even harder, accumulate more wealth, amass more power, pursue love more fervently, indulge in more pleasure, pursue more academic knowledge. Have you ever lost, those of you who drive, have you ever lost your way while you were driving? Especially if you're old enough like me, before the days of GPS. What do you do when you get lost when you're driving? you drive faster, right? You drive faster. The difference is that unlike us, Solomon really had it all. Been there, done that, got 300 wives and 700 concubines to prove it. He said that I did not deny myself anything that my heart desired. He tested everything in life. And what was his conclusion? Well, it's a long book, but let me just quote from 2 passages in the book that I think really summarizes the essence of his findings. First, Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 19 onwards, he says, surely the fate of human beings is like that of the animals. The same fate awaits them both. As one dies, so dies the other. All have the same breath. Humans have no advantage over animals. Everything is meaningless. All go to the same place. All come from dust, and to dust all return. Who knows if the human spirit rises upward and the spirit of the animal goes down in the earth? So I saw that there is nothing better for a person than to enjoy their work, because that is their Lord. For who can bring them to see what will happen after them? Notice he's talking about the first parameter here, right? This life only. We only live for this life. And his conclusion is that if this life is all that there is, then ultimately everything is meaningless. And he's trying to be fair, trying to be objective here. He says that, well, in a way, you can find enjoyment. You can find a certain kind of enjoyment, for example, in your work, but ultimately, you cannot find what you really want, which is meaning. He says the same thing again, for example, in Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verses 8 to 10. Always be clothed in white, I guess. In those days, that means dress very nicely. And always anoint your head with oil. Look good. Enjoy life with your wife, whom you love, all the days of, very jarring, this meaningless life that God has given you under the sun, all your meaningless days. For this is your lot in life and your toilsome labor under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do with all your might. For in the realm of the dead, where you are going, there is neither working, nor planning, nor knowledge, nor wisdom. Here we find the second, and in fact, I find both parameters. This life, this world, and this life only. Under the sun. Again, he says, if that's all that there is, yes, you can enjoy many things. You can enjoy love, you can enjoy work, but ultimately, everything is still meaningless. They do not meet the real need. Tell the person next to you, meaningless. Can you, as what modern people say, find meaning in this life? Only this life and what this world has to offer. Can you make your own meaning? Is it, as Gold asserts, liberating, exhilarating? Finding your own meaning, is it liberating? Is it exhilarating? Well, only if it works, right? But it does not. At best, what's going to happen is you find something to distract yourself momentarily, to numb your pain or boredom or inadequacy or emptiness, but you can never fill that void. When Gold says you can find your own meaning, you can create your own meaning, he has confused purpose with meaning. He's confused purpose with meaning. They are two different things. But for a time, many of them mix them up because purpose can masquerade as meaning for a while. But they are not the same thing. And I thought one brilliant illustration of this is given by someone who referred to Greek mythology, King Sisyphus. Have you heard of King Sisyphus? He did something wrong, and then the gods punished him by making him push a boulder, roll a boulder up to the top of the hill, only to have it roll down back to the bottom each time, and then he has to repeat the process for all of eternity. Very depressing, right? Did Sisyphus have a purpose? Yes, he had a purpose. He's supposed to get the boulder to the top of the hill. Is what he's doing, did it have meaning? Not that he would know of, right? He had no meaning. Similarly, many of us are very purposeful in life. We are very busy doing things. We are very passionate about what we do. We feel that we have found it, but actually what we have is only purpose. we never ask what's the meaning of it. Without God, we can busy ourselves with all kinds of things. But ultimately, they fail to address the bigger why question. Why are we here? Why do we exist? What is this all about? Are we just pushing a boulder to the top of the hill over and over again? In fact, that's the problem with naturalism, right? And not only that, naturalism faces an even bigger problem in the search for meaning because it actually requires you to practice a certain kind of self-deception to enjoy what you are doing. For example, many people seek meaning in love. Okay, love is one of those things that make us feel that life is so meaningful, especially when you're in love, right? Naturalism says that you only find your lover lovely because a long series of accidental mutations created the physical and personality features that enable her ancestors to compete better and therefore to pass those traits down to her. And even your own feeling of love, so real to you, is just evolved to bring chemistry, nothing more than that. You didn't exercise a real choice, You're just following nature's programming and it all just happened by chance that you are here. And that's why you feel this way. In other words, her loveliness and your love are purely simulated by your brain. It's an illusion. Now, if you start going down that path and thinking rationally like that, I think it's going to be hard to enjoy anything, okay? Love or anything else. Okay, because, it's like we praise, many of you here are mothers and you love your children. It's so beautiful, right, to see a mother's love for a child. And naturalism says that actually it is not that. It's not that. There's nothing noble about it. It just happened to be, right? Because those people who feel this way, they pass down their genes. The people who don't feel this way, accidentally, they have been selected out. That's all. There's nothing noble about it. Now, some of you said that you're sad that you didn't get me talk about beauty last week because I had COVID, right? So, let me just say that naturalism has the same problem with beauty. Many of us find meaning in beauty. But, in a purely naturalistic world that came about by chance, by accident, as they claim, the concept of beauty itself is actually meaningless. It doesn't objectively exist. Whether you're talking about sublime works of art, so stirring music, breathtaking sceneries in nature, you only find such things beautiful because your ancestors accidentally developed the genes to appreciate such settings, and by that, somehow they gain an edge in the process of natural selection. Your mind tricks you into it. Beauty has no independent meaning of its own. It's not real. Doesn't actually exist. You see, the real essence, let's come back to meaning. The real essence of meaning is intention. Meaning tells us what something is meant to be. That there's an intention behind it. But by definition, a naturalistic universe can have no capacity for intention because only a personal being can intend anything. A purely naturalistic universe happened randomly, impersonally, unintentionally. It can have no real meaning. And yet, something inside us resists that, rebels against that, doesn't it? That this world and all that we find useful, meaningful, beautiful, is just an illusion. Something inside our inclination says, no, that cannot be. That brings us to the second point. Let's talk about inclinations for a while. Now, most of us begin our search for meaning with trying to satisfy our deep needs, our own desires. But deep down inside, or somewhere along the way, we find something inside telling us that true meaning cannot really be found just by focusing on ourselves, our needs, our welfare. One of the most profound teachings of Jesus is found in Luke chapter 12, verse 15. He said to them, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. Older version says the fullness of life. does not consist in the abundance of possessions. And the meaning of life cannot be found just by accumulating stuff. I mean, all of us know it feels good to accumulate stuff, right? When you accumulate stuff, it lets you feel superior to people who have accumulated less. Accumulate the stuff, it gives you some kind of security against the uncertainties of the future, right? It feels nice. But yet what Jesus says here, to do the opposite, it resonates with something inside us. That life, or the meaning of life, can only be found when we move in the opposite direction. When we seek to give rather than to get. When we choose to share rather than to hoard. So all of us, I believe, okay, this is not my own personal experience, all of us, we find this strange tension within our hearts. On the one hand, we very much all want to protect ourselves and promote ourselves. We are scared to death of losing out and getting left behind. You know, Singaporeans, right? Wow, property prices. How can I buy a house? Wow, interest rate going up. Wow, my money inflation. You know. Yeah, I mean, talk to the young people. Wow, I better spend all my time getting all the exchange programs and all the attachments. You know, in addition to getting perfect grades, we have this thing. We need to pursue our own interests, protect ourselves, promote ourselves. On the other hand, we also sense that true significance or meaning can only be found in putting others before ourselves. Not by joining and winning the rat race, but somehow in living for something bigger than ourselves. We find evidence of this everywhere in our lives. For example, we say that some professions are noble professions, right? What do you think of when you say noble professions? Doctors, nurses, teachers, maybe pastors, who knows, right? You know, I used to be a lawyer. I tell you this something. Lawyers believe sincerely that lawyering is a noble profession. But unfortunately, non-lawyers seldom think so, especially when they pay the astronomical legal fees, right? We think of them as sharks. But why would we say some professions are more noble? You know, we never apply this term noble profession to some other jobs, many other jobs, right? Right? I tell my friend, the property agent, we never say it's a noble profession. Okay, very sorry. We have very good property agents in our church. They really add value, very good people. But that's a fact. We never say that, wow, you're in such a noble profession. I shall tell all my children to become like you. Right? But sorry, guys, that's a fact. Huh? The answer is that we all have a stereotyped idea that people get into certain kinds of jobs with the motivation, and all those people get into all those jobs, get into the motivation to help others rather than just for personal gain. And although that's not true, I mean, there are many greedy doctors also, right? We like that idea because we see that as being more meaningful, right? More meaningful. And we like it. Or take volunteering or giving. When you help out in a charitable organization, you make donations to it. Or those of you who come to church, when you serve in a ministry, when you give your offerings, we find a unique kind of joy and satisfaction in that. Right? In other words, we find meaning in giving rather than getting, in serving rather than being served, in lowering ourselves rather than trying to get ahead of everybody else. And we don't even need other people to know that and approve of our altruism. In fact, there's even greater satisfaction when it's all hidden, when nobody really knows. And the truth is, this church exists and works only because of the instinct within us and because so many people here in Brighton Community Church follow that instinct, right? To serve, to give, to live sacrificially. So guys, please go for the, Brighton Connection program. Sign up for Sunday school teachers, whatever. Okay, but we sense this in our hearts. Even in our interpersonal relationships, we find this dynamic at work all the time. There is somehow a special joy in making sacrifices and going the extra mile for the people that you most care about, isn't it? I mean, we have lots of parents with young children here, and you talk to them, they're always groaning about the tremendous burden caring for their newborn, their young children. And that's understandable. I mean, nothing else you do in life will require as much sacrifice, as much loss of freedom, with as little tangible returns for as long a time. Maybe 15 years or never at all. Right? And yet, the reality is that many of us go through that. With one child, we really suffer through it, and then we go on to have more children. Are we just suckers for pain? Or could it be because we do actually find deep meaning in pouring our lives out for the life of another? There's something in it that pursuing the things of this world just cannot substitute for. I believe that our instincts, our inclinations, is telling us an important truth. We were made for something more. We were not wired to live primarily for ourselves. That is not the real us. Something wrong happened along the way, and then we have all these selfish tendencies, we have these kiasu tendencies, but that's not who we really are inside. We are not made like that. We were created to exist for something bigger. And the closer we come to this something bigger, the more we find meaning in our lives. One of the Bible passages that's impacted me more than many others is found in Acts chapter 20, verses 22 to 24, in which the Apostle Paul said this, "And now compelled by the Spirit, I am going to Jerusalem, not knowing what will happen to me there. I only know that in every city the Holy Spirit warns me that prison and hardships are facing me. So go or don't go." He says, "However, I consider my life worth nothing to me. My only aim is to finish the race and complete the task the Lord Jesus has given me, the task of testifying to the good news of God's grace." Now, you don't even have to be a Christian, right, to read this and find this word stirring. We find it not just from the Bible, but our favorite movies, our beloved stories that we read and read to our children. We find the same thing in all this. Someone laying down his life to live for a greater cause than himself. Somehow that always touches us at a very deep level. And it inspires us to want to live a little bit less selfishly, right? A little bit more selflessly, except that we are always also held back by the fear of personal loss or personal failure. Yet, something inside us, all of us, very much wants our life to be more than just about ourselves. Living just for ourselves and families may feel safe, may feel comfortable, but it doesn't make us feel that our lives really count for very much. But living unselfishly for others gives us a sense of significance and makes us feel that this is closer to what we were really made for. But ultimately, living to please, to serve, to honor our Creator is the only thing that can satisfy our deepest need for meaning. And I think we all sense this deep down inside. Modern secular people don't deny that we sense this deep down inside, but they say that, well, this is nothing more than the accidental outcome of evolution, the fact that you have this desire. We feel this way only because those before us who randomly evolved to feel this way were the most fit to compete and to survive, and so they pass on their genes to us, so we also feel this way. It's all just an illusion. How do we know? Are they right? Are they wrong? How do we know that whether there's really a Creator who made us, and which is why we can find meaning only by living our lives for Him? Or are all this just the things we feel, it's just all an illusion, a trick that nature has played on us? After all, as Solomon says in his great wisdom, all we can know are this life, this world. Well, the good news is that we have something Solomon never had. And that brings us to the third point, number 3, the intervention. The difference between those who believe in God theists and those who don't has often been described as a competition between faith and works. Faith and reason. Faith and reason. Now, it is assumed, and it's often said, that people who believe in God, the theists, do so without objective evidence. Or worse, they believe despite the evidence. They believe against evidence. They can only do so because they make an irrational leap into the unknown. On the other hand, modern secular people claim they are just following the facts. They're scientific. And the facts have proven conclusively that there is no God. Neither claim is correct at all. The truth is both systems of belief, theism, naturalism, they are based on faith. Now, it might not be so obvious when it talks about naturalism, that this is all that there is, or came up by chance, or just randomly evolved away. How is that based on faith? First of all, the only way we can perceive the world is through our senses and reasoning. But how do we know that they are accurately reporting reality to us? How do we know we can trust our senses and our reasoning? Answer is, we don't know. We can't be sure. As the movie Matrix has so brilliantly demonstrated, we may all just be lying in a vat of liquid somewhere with electrodes planted in our brains that generate all the sensations and experiences that we have. There is no way to prove that that is not true. We assume that our senses are telling us the truth about the universe. That's faith. It's not fact. It's not science. Right? It's a philosophical commitment. We can't prove it. Secondly, even if our senses and reasoning are accurately reporting the truth to us, they can only report what they are able to perceive. Right? Your eye can only see, your ears can only hear, and you can only reason about the physical universe. Is there a world that our senses and reasoning cannot penetrate? It's entirely possible. Who knows? We can never know because we don't have the faculties to detect it. So when we say that nothing apart from nature exists, it's not because that has been or can be demonstrated. Naturalism is not fact. It is a philosophical commitment to a preconceived position that cannot be proven. In other words, it is just as much based on faith. Christianity, on the other hand, is not irrational. It's not blind believing. In fact, the early Christians never demanded blind faith. And the truth is their audience were the kind of people who were the most unlikely to reject their claims, to be skeptical about what they say, because Christians insisted that their teacher, their leader, had claimed to be and was the Son of God. You need to understand this. For the Jews, many centuries of conditioning, because of many centuries of cultural conditioning, nothing could be more offensive than a man claiming to be God. That, to them, is blasphemy. It means nothing to us, but to them, is a capital offense. In fact, that's the only basis on which the Jewish religious authority justified Jesus' execution. That he was a godless pretender, a blasphemer. So why was it that shortly after they did that, thousands of Jews converted in such a short time to Christianity, in such great numbers that Christianity could take off as a movement against all the odds? Why did thousands of Jews overnight make this paradigm shift? Jesus the blasphemer, to Jesus is God. Because of the resurrection. Because the facts surrounding the death and return of Christ are so well established, these people could not come to any other conclusion than that Jesus had power over death, just as he predicted, and who could have such power other than God himself. The resurrection of Jesus not only provides us with powerful, credible evidence of his divinity, it also answers the question that Solomon had asked so long ago. New Testament puts it this way in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 15 to 17. And he, Jesus, died for all, that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but for him who died for them and was raised again. So from now on, we regard no one from a worldly point of view. Though we once regarded Christ in this way, we do so no longer. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come, the old has gone, the new is here. What does the Apostle Paul mean when he says that we no longer regard anyone from a worldly point of view? We no longer regard Christ from a worldly point of view. He was referring to the time when he assumed that Jesus was just another man, just another human being only. Just like the other apostles, right, during Jesus' lifetime also thought that way about him, he's just another man. But when they realized that Jesus had indeed risen from the dead, just as he claimed he would, it radically changed their understanding of reality. Jesus, why? Because Jesus was the only human being who was not subject to the two limitations. He alone had come back from the dead, from beyond this life. Just as he claimed he would, which also meant that he was not limited to being someone under the sun. He was from beyond this world. You see, the amazing thing is this. God had done something Solomon could only wish for but never had a chance to experience. God intervened in our world. He did it by taking on a physical form, flesh and blood human being. By doing so, and by coming back from the grave, Jesus enables us to know that there is a reality, there is a life beyond this one, beyond this world, beyond this life. Not only that, he came so that we can experience that other reality and enjoy that other life. Because of Christ, as Paul says, we no longer regard anyone from a purely worldly point of view, as if this life, this world is all that there is. In fact, if we trust in Christ for our salvation, we become a new creation because now we are connected and we are eligible to experience a whole new world beyond this one. And the best part is that we can finally answer the why question, the meaning that we crave. Remember, I said, meaning is about living for something bigger than ourselves. Living for what was intended for us. Well, by definition, there is nothing bigger than God. And so we will find no higher meaning in life than living to worship Him, serve Him, obey Him, proclaim Him, seek Him. Naturally, part of us shrinks back from that, not only because our pride makes us want to take charge of our own life, but also we are afraid. We have a fear that, wow, if God takes over control of life, He's going to enslave us, He's going to oppress us, He's going to make us do all kinds of things we do, and we are going to be miserable. How do we overcome that very real fear? I mean, honestly, for those of you who are not Christians, isn't that your fear? It's not so much about the theological objections, it's not so much about the evidence, it's the fear of losing control. How do you know that? If I submit to this God, He's not going to make my life miserable. That I won't be trapped in that. How do we know? Again, it is by the way Christ came to us. Jesus said in John chapter 10, verses 9 to 10, I am the gate. Whoever enters through me will be saved. They will come in and go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. So, what gives us the assurance that God is not going to exploit us, trap us, make us miserable? It is the fact that God, when He came to us, He did not come to steal from us our freedom or anything else. He did not come to kill us or destroy us, even though, right, we deserve that. Instead, Jesus says, I came as a good shepherd to suffer the ultimate penalty on your behalf. He did that when He went to the cross and died for our sins. And He did it so that we can have life. Life to the full, max life. meaningful life, satisfying life, a rich life, lived in worship of Christ, not because He needs it, He doesn't, but because being created beings, we need to serve our Creator to find true meaning. Why am I here? Why do I exist? What's the point of all? Answer is, God made us with the intention of being loved by Him and of loving Him in return. As I prepared this sermon, I thought about the most difficult decision I've ever made in my life. Okay? It was not the decision to marry my wife. That was a no-brainer. It was the decision to pastor this church full-time, 20 years ago. It was a difficult decision because there was this titanic tug of war going on in my heart. Part of me screamed, don't do it. Don't be stupid. Don't be reckless. Don't be crazy. Don't take the risk of failure. You're doing okay. Why do you want to do it? Take care of yourself. Secure your family's future. Let them find someone else. I'm sure anyone else also better than me. Okay, it's easy to rationalize that way, right? But there was another powerful voice in my heart. It tells me that what I really need was to know that I lived not just a good life, but a meaningful life. That I'm not lived just for my own selfish needs, but for a bigger cause than myself. That I've not sought to please only myself, primarily myself, but to please the God whom I claim to worship. It was a titanic struggle, but by God's grace, He gave me the courage to say yes. And I can testify that I'll do the same all over again, especially now that I know what it feels like. Not because I have done such a great job, not because this job is so fun, a lot of times it really isn't, not because I've finished the job already, but because I discovered that meaning is ultimately found in living for God, obeying, serving, honoring Him rather than self. Brothers and sisters, friends, whether you're Christian, whether you're not Christian, all of us deal with the same internal tension in our hearts. Right? There's two voices, there's two forces. One says, live for yourself, protect yourself, take care of yourself, take care of family, don't care about anything else. And another say, you were built for significance. You were built for greatness. Your life counts for something. Of course, God is not asking all of us to go and do the same thing, but He's asking all of us to live for Him courageously rather than just cowardly for ourselves. Step out in faith and embrace a life of meaning rather than just a life of ease. He may be asking some of you here, take a big step now. Or maybe take some small baby steps. Only you know. Only you can know. And you will know if you seek Him with a humble and open heart. My prayer is that all Brightonites will not just live a good life, but a meaningful life. We know one of the things that the pandemic has done, 2 years lockdown and all that, is that it's made many of us passive and inward-looking, right? Because for a long time, we went from being very busy to doing very little, right? We're taking care of all kinds of things and just taking care of our own needs. And we are creatures of habit. Pandemic, hopefully, is, we're coming out of that by all appearances and accounts. But we have lived for a long time, giving in to the first impulse. Take care of yourself, protect yourself, promote yourself. And for a long time, we have not exercised the other muscle. Living a life that counts, living a meaningful life, putting the needs of others before ourselves, taking risks to follow God and do what He's calling us to do. As a church, in a full-time staff team, we spend a lot of time, huge amount of time, trying to think how to make this church better, easier, more attractive, less troublesome. Okay? Make things smoother, easier. So that people who come will feel that, wow, it's not so burdensome. But I always tell the staff team, always remind them, look, you can't build a great church just by doing that. Just by making everything nice and easy. Because then that's just a transaction. And if that's the way we want to go, there are many other people who will do better than us. Because more resources, right, to do that. But that's not what builds a great church. The kind of church that we really want to belong to deep down inside. What builds a great church is when people follow the other inclination in their heart. When they recognize that meaning can only be found in something bigger than themselves. When they reject all the voices that the world is constantly telling us, better upgrade fast, better don't get left behind. Go all out, secure ourselves, secure our family. COVID over, wow, better travel all, make up for all that you've not traveled until air ticket prices are so high. Right. It is only when all of us give in, follow the other instinct, our God-given instinct, the way we were created, for meaning. When we start giving and serving, sacrificing, living for significance and greatness rather than just a good life, then not only will we find meaning for ourselves, we will build a great church that will make a difference in our nation. And hopefully not just in our nation, but in the nations beyond. And that is my call to all of us. To live lives of meaning and to be the kind of people that God has called us to be.